ich dir noch angesäche, so bist du ihr aller Ehre. Was ist Wundes hier geschäche? Dass ein Magd ein Kind gebar, ihre über aller Engel Schar. Was das nicht ein Wunder gar.
This is The New Right, a podcast for the lost arts, reclaiming the literary Holy Land from the heathen. This is Matt Pegas,
And this is Dan Baltic.
and we are back after too long. Summer gets in the way, and current events perhaps get in the way. It's obviously been a very hectic summer politically, and we are back with a relevant topic to that. Hillbilly Elegy by JD Vance.
Absolutely. This is I thought of, possible episode titles, and I was thinking an elegy for posters, perhaps, and an elegy for
Yeah.
our guys, but hopefully not, because
Yeah, because an
we
elegy is
yeah,
like a
is
sad
yes.
remembrance, right? Yeah, go
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
The elegy would be that if Kamala actually wins, I don't know. I mean, so like there's obviously been so I mean that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world for, our guys as perhaps, some people suggest. But
Yeah, I would
certainly
agree. Yeah.
there's there's a lot of tumult going on. Obviously Trump was almost assassinated.
Right.
That was a pretty incredible moment, and responded with, frankly, like just courage. I honestly didn't think he had. I didn't think he was the type of guy who would pop back up and pump his fist and say, fight, fight, fight. But I mean, he did, and
Right.
that was incredible. Yeah, Biden then immediately dropping out, more or less, probably, as I understand it, due to, in part, obviously, to, deep state, arm twisting, but also some type of stroke. And, his naming Kamala, becoming essentially, it seems like, the nominee.
Yeah.
And, and then I've always, and from the beginning, whether it was Biden or whomever, my position on this is that, like, if Trump has to win by a significant percentage to defeat the margin of fortification, shall we say.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, I mean, I think probably odds are against that. So,
Odds seem to be against it today, but there is still time. I mean, it's hard to talk about these things without sounding cliche, but that's true. The polls don't look good now. As our friend Isaac Simpson tweeted, it's not even so much whether you believe the polls, it's that these media organizations feel emboldened to post them, which kind of, I mean, I don't want to delve too far down the rabbit hole here of saying exactly what I think this margin of fortification is and whatnot. That's not really my forte, but we're all in this corner of the internet. We all accept that there's some fuckery, right? And yeah, I just think the mere fact that the media story is being, let me just say it this way. I think so much of the story of Kamala and Tim Walz and the campaign, and the way that it's going, and the way these supposedly spontaneous memes rising up about it, um I think a lot of it is it's very a lot of it is definitely fake and manufactured. Some of it is probably real, as we denizens of the internet and users of memes know. It doesn't always completely matter what's manufactured and what's real, because eventually or almost immediately that the line between those things breaks down pretty fast. You could have New York Times saying like Kamala Harris is winning the meme war after 2 days of her campaign, and maybe it wasn't exactly organic or true, but then all of a sudden, this is how memes work. In short, everyone jumps on the bandwagon, and she's genuinely getting a lot of heads um, at her rallies. So I think there is this. Basically I think it's both manufactured and real at the same time. This enthusiasm. But to go back to what I was saying, in terms of if they held the election today, she'd be in a very good position. There is still a lot of time. Trump, due to the incidents you were talking about first, the timeline of incidents is this for me. I mean, it was Biden's disastrous debate performance, and everyone sort of getting reality pilled about what was going on there, which even I was not fully like. I was always like, yes, he seems old, but like, is it really as bad as some on the right are saying? Seemingly, the answer to that question is yes. I don't even have all the details in front of me, but I think more and more there's a Ross Douthat thing in the Times this morning about how like there still is like this kind of crisis of faith with Biden. And like we're learning more and more that things have been covered up for a while. So that's all still true. Anyway,
Yeah.
that played into Trump's hand, and the assassination attempt really did. They would have us believe, and this is the main topic of conversation today, they would have us believe that JD Vance and I guess the Republican National Convention in general dampened some of that enthusiasm, seemingly based on the legacy media. That's what happened. I don't know. I think there is still grassroots support for Vance and for Trump's continuation of his message. But yeah, that's the narrative, is that Trump was on a winning streak that got dampened. Biden actually drops out, and Kamala's just been on this tear ever since. Which again, some of it's manufactured, some of it's real. There's no difference between the manufactured and the real in a media culture, I guess. Uh, all I'm trying to say is her initial wave of enthusiasm will run itself dry. And the important thing, I think, is what happens after that. Once they really start debating, Trump is seemingly down, but can come back. And I agree that there is going to be fuckery afoot, and he has to be more than just good. He has to be very, very strong. But I still have
Yeah.
hope. I still have hope. It just right now it's still August, and the campaign is gonna. I mean, think how much has changed in the past 1 month, 2 months. It's insane,
Absolutely.
and it's probably won't continue to be that insane, because that's pretty historically unprecedented how insane it was. But there's still a lot of time. So I still have hope, but also I still have hope, but I also still have a rock sort of in my stomach, in the pit of my stomach about it as well. Of course, it's not pretty. We're really seeing how the sausage is made, and it's ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so my, you know, impression of JD Vance is so wholly at odds with like the liberal girl boss impression. I was just like, startled kind of by that people don't like him because
Yeah.
when I saw it, I didn't really feel too much one way or the other about him, but I watched his nomination speech. It was good. He's well spoken, whatever. He's seems pretty well put together, and there's this kind of like that, like he gives women the ick. Well, like number one, I watched it with my girlfriend, and she thought that he was like, oh, like he seems like a good guy. He seems like like I don't think we got into like how sexually attractive he is, but
Yeah.
she didn't like he didn't give her the ick.
Right.
And I mean, she's not really liberal, not progressive. So I think to an extent this is maybe just like progressive women who, I mean, obviously is spun up by the media, but
Mm.
it's progressive women who are, you know, they've seized upon a seeming weakness of JD Vance, in that he's not like a super Chad or something. And the idea that like, oh, okay, if you're a not a Chad and you're have opinions about abortion, how dare you? Because you're trying to control women's reproductive rights, and you're not even a Chad. And
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is like that's the fucking point. The reason why you need to control women's reproductive rights is for the betas. So it does perfectly make sense. But I mean, beyond that, I mean, like this kind of, and this parallels my experience with, the way the media treated Trump. I just
Yeah.
kept I liked him more after. And now,
Same.
now I really like Trump. And, frankly, I see more of myself in JD than in Trump.
Of
And,
course. Yeah.
with them, shitting on him, I'm like now all in. Like JD Vance, I want him to become Emperor of America. I want him to, legislate from his throne and punish these people for disparaging him
Yeah.
because, he's like clearly a member of the Nut Army, I feel.
Yes. Yes, and that gets into him being a member of the Nut Army, us being the type of dudes we are. That my thesis is on the question of is JD Vance a weird guy or not? I provide the same answer. You see this meme. It's more than just a Kamala thing. It's used as a disparagement for the way liberals talk about a lot of things. But this idea like, oh, is Kamala a DEI candidate? No, but it's good that she is.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? That's how I feel with the weird question. It's like, no, JD Vance is not a weird guy, but it's also good that he is. I can go to bat to say that he's really not a
Yeah,
weird guy, that he's normal, but to the extent that he is slightly odd in the way that a lot of slightly
absolutely.
higher IQ people, slightly, I don't know, just quieter sometimes people are, then I think it's good. And I think I brought that up because you captured it really well with the Nut Army thing. I mean, is the Nut Army weird? Yeah, no, but if
Yeah.
they are, I don't know. Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I will be the first to say that the Nut Army is weird, but I love them. I'm weird.
right. Yeah.
I think so. There was like a meme going on that Donald Trump taught me that it was okay to be weird. And
Yeah.
there's something to that,
No, there really is, and that meme I feel like didn't take off because it's still a weird thing it's not the best PR, I guess. But it was funny for a second, when there was the whole weird MAGA thing. I mean, talk about potential titles for this episode. I was thinking of that too, like the dawn of weird MAGA. But no,
I
I
mean, I
don't.
think that might
Yeah,
actually be a good title. And, frankly, I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing that Donald Trump or that JD Vance is it takes ownership of being weird. I
yeah,
think that, there probably are a lot of guys like us who, are voting for Trump, are, on this side of the end. But there are probably a lot of guys who are not voting for Trump, but are like us, but feel like empathy or sympathy because we have similar lifestyles, similar whatever.
right,
And frankly, like I think a few days ago or maybe even yesterday, Trump gave a press release where he said he's way up with white men. Well, I think the selection of JD Vance, he's way up with our guys. He's way up
right.
with like weird white guys, and that that's not nothing. Beyond the fact that that is not nothing, I think so. Like you and I both are, probably people would say we're part of the cultural elite. If
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
not the
yeah,
economic elite, whatever. Um, this is actually the weird guys. That's an important part of the demo, the voting and political and economic slice of the country.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
like shit on them at your own peril, I would say, to the kind of the Kamala camp.
Yeah, I worry demographically. It's like how much, and BAP is always time, and others are always time. It's like how much are our guys really a force online? And the sense is it's a strong minority. But with the weird MAGA thing, you know, cues you into because like I do think weird in the sense they mean it has quite a bit to do with IQ, frankly. I think that
Yeah,
it's basically a dig
sure.
at somewhat smarter white guys. Maybe at times slightly neurotic white guys. I don't think JD Vance is especially neurotic, but that's the kind of the gist of it is it's like, oh, you're one of those guys.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
I mean,
trying,
like he's a
yeah,
nerd, right? He's a
yeah,
nerd,
I
and
think
he's
that's basically
not.
what they mean. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he's not like, he's not such a Chad that he overcomes being, but I mean, I think that's a false distinction in the sexual politics here
Yeah.
because, okay, JD Vance is like, let's take them at face value. He's a beta, and betas should not be talking about abortion or whatever. Is that if that's what they're saying? Well, it does the corollary is that then that Chads can talk about it. Well, okay, so I
Only
don't
Gavin
know
Newsom.
who.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean like okay, but he's like left wing, but like
Right.
who would their, version of a who would a right wing Chad be? I mean, maybe it's problematic that I can't that there is not a culturally well-known and recognizable one that I can think of right
Well,
now.
Trump.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
yes, but like he's also like older. He's like, whatever. But like, yeah, okay. But let's use Trump. Fine.
Yeah.
Trump, when Trump talks about abortion and stuff, they still shit on him. They
Yeah,
still,
yeah.
they still are just like, you're a pig, you're this, you're that, and like, and they still pretend they don't want him. And maybe now that he's older, many women don't want him. But I mean, like he was a pretty good looking guy when he was younger, and he
Yeah.
was, pretty charming. The liberal media, they loved him. They thought he was in so many movies doing cameos, and he was like in these movies as a marker to show within the movie that this is a restaurant that is hip.
Yeah.
This is a restaurant that is not only hip, but that is masculine. That is where like, kind of like rich chads hang out. And so, but the minute he, started expressing politics that, are not palatable to the elites, he became something else. And that's, so that to my point there is, whether JD Vance is weird, whether he is a Chad, whether he is, whatever, they're gonna disparage and hate him regardless
Right. Well,
because of his
yeah.
politics.
And you kind of
And
you said
yeah,
this when we were going over our notes for the show. I think you said it on the air as well. I mean, it's a ginned up thing. It's as with all of these things, they're manufactured. Like the left just has channeling Isaac here maybe a little bit, just has better PR or has better access to that PR system than the right does. And I fully believe a lot of these well, some of it's organic. Was it not Tim Waltz who started the Vance's weird thing?
maybe.
Might have said that
Yeah.
organically, but then it's like it's picked up on. It's the memo go. I believe there is a memo, perhaps a literal memo that
Oh
goes out
yeah.
to the New
No, I
York
mean
Times,
absolutely.
and they chose this talking point. But it is and almost transparently so. Like to be fair, I mean this is politics as usual in a way, and like yeah, you're gonna find your things to make fun of your opponents. Or Trump fucking does it. So like I'm not saying it's inherently wrong to just pick a line and make fun of people.
Yeah.
Like in this case, no, I don't appreciate the Vance thing, and it makes me even more anti Kamala and anti Waltz than I would have been, because it is personal. I do kind of relate to the JD Vance type, but at the same time, if I'm being fair, it's like this is kind of the whole thing is kind of funny, right? And like this is kind of the fun side of politics, I guess, is trading these barbs. I say that, and then it's like maybe it's not good because like the sentiment's pretty genuinely destructive, but I guess I'm
Yeah.
trying to be fair and say like bring it on. We have our own memes about Kamala and Waltz. I guess where it gets less fun is that is censorship and the fact that there's not as much of a right-wing pro-Trump media in this country
Yeah.
outside of Fox, which even Fox is very unloyal, very disloyal, very unreliable. So it's I'm not pretending it's a totally fair playing field, but long story short, I think it's almost transparent that they know they're being cunts about Vance.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Um, yeah.
it's well, it's not fair, but I mean that's always a kind of spurious argument in the sense that, well, if you're a man, why are you asking for things to be fair? You should just, play with the cards you're dealt. And I mean, I think that's fine. I think there's like, probably unfair, in a sense, criticisms of Kamala, unfair criticisms of Tim Waltz, and you can just kind of play ball. But I mean, the fact is, if you're going to, say that like JD Vance is weird, that we don't like him, whatever. Well, you're gonna alienate the guys who associate with JD Vance, and
Yeah.
that actually is probably not a politically and economically insignificant segment of the electorate.
No, I
Um,
agree. Yeah, and I wonder. I mean, on the flip side, we have this white guys for Harris thing, which seemed to do kind of well as a meme. Even as we made fun of it, it also seemed that some dudes were genuinely willing to embrace that. Then this gets compounded by the waltz of it all, the camo hat of it
yeah.
all. There's a real concerted effort to make it counter appeal. Again, I will just bracket all by saying, like, outside of politics and outside of the potentially really bad consequence of this, it is pretty funny. Like all of this back and forth. It will be. Put
Oh,
it
it
this way.
is.
Put it
Yeah.
this way. If Trump and Vance win, all of it will have been funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all of it will have been worth it. As it is now, I have my fears. I agree that there's a huge chunk of the electorate that are just normal white dudes, obviously. And I do fear. I don't. I think you'd have to be pretty dumb to be fooled into. I mean, it's one thing if you're just an OG Democrat and you're pro-abortion or whatever. Like, what you're gonna vote for Kamala, whatever. But I can't imagine these swing voter white dudes who are like, who represents my interests better? Oh, this guy Tim Waltz used to hunt, and I can get a camo hat. Like I don't know if that
Yeah.
guy may exist, and that's just a testament to how retarded people are.
Yeah.
But I also like to have more faith and think that it won't. We shall see. Obviously, I still think Trump's going to win with white guys pretty soundly. So that's good. But they're very consciously and amusingly trying to make inroads. Um,
I
talking
mean,
in
it
circles here,
reminds
but go on. Yeah,
me of how I don't know if you've seen these graphs, but in Gen Z, the political divide between men and women is, increasingly diverging.
really.
And oh yeah, yeah, and then across the West, but yeah, I mean, really only we're talking about uh if not the Western, like South Korea or whatever,
Yeah.
countries within Western hegemony. Well, I mean, also the
Yeah.
countries that are governed by the post-sexual revolution,
Yeah.
morality, what
Yeah.
have you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, so I think we are seeing like an increasing divergence between men and women politically.
Mhm.
And, I think it's just kind of it's something that is frankly not talked about enough. And I think from, a certain kind of insulated worldview, you have people in the Kamala camp who are, thinking like, oh, if we call him an incel, JD Vance, that this will make everyone, want to disassociate with him. And they don't necessarily realize that there is, a real underbelly of, actual like political divergence that is occurring
Yeah.
in the youth. And, this
Uh-huh.
is,
Yeah.
you also it is, it is relevant that, I mean, not to get too spicy here, but
Hmm.
if you have, a country, a nation that is divided between men and women, with like men and women in separate political parties, um, I am taking this from somewhere. I forget who, said it before me, but elections are a proxy for war. And it's, you basically agree that, well, war isn't very good. It's not helpful. We don't want to do it. So we do an election. And well, okay, but if, suddenly half the country is, men, they'd probably be a lot better at winning such a contest. So then
Yeah,
maybe elections stop at some point. So that's something to consider. And I mean, also, it's not very healthy to have this type of political
it's
divide.
incredibly
It's
unhealthy. I mean, it's you hear about the death of the West. Like, is that it? Is the reproductive principle diverging and splitting? Obviously, we
Yeah,
hear
I
about
mean,
lowering birth rates, but is there? Well, I don't know. I'm being a little bit histrionic saying that. Obviously, there's still plenty of women who will vote for Trump, and plenty of dudes who will vote Kamala, and it's racial too. But I've always agreed with that. Like I remember there was I think an Atlantic article of all places, obviously in a negative anti-Trump tone, that came out like 2017, 2018. That was like how the gender kind of divide is at the heart of not just Trump, but the general populist uprising is like a male more so basically I think it was arguing that it was a little bit more so a male backlash than anything. And that's always been at least a very important part of the story,
yeah,
regardless of the fact that Marine Le Pen is as a woman, all the, like, I remember posting that article and everyone's like, well, what are you talking about? But even if it doesn't matter necessarily who the figureheads are, like you could have Tim Walz running against Ann Coulter for president this year, say, and it would still be, Ann Coulter would be on the male side of things. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't break down super neatly, but like I do still think there's a male versus female, almost like a solar versus lunar energy. Well, I shouldn't put it that way, but you know what I'm saying?
yeah. No,
Archetype,
agreed, agreed.
archetypal way. There's a gender clash here, which is to me makes, and I'm a little bit, I'm not Kamala deranged. I find Kamala funny, even though I
Yeah.
seriously dislike her and definitely don't want her as president. She just doesn't ruffle my feathers. I am kind of Tim Waltz deranged, like him as like a court jester, white dude,
Yeah.
Midwestern guy pisses me off pretty
No, I
badly.
mean,
I'm
I
gonna
get
lie.
that.
So anyway, the fact that I view it in that context, like he really is like you posted something, Dan, and others have too. Like Kamala's Kamala is calling. I better sit my white ass down and listen or whatever. He's that energy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's very for want of a better word, very cucked.
yeah,
Very,
yeah.
you know, it what more could you say about that, really?
Yeah, no, there's not much to say. I mean, I'm trying to chill out because I think getting deranged about people and be like, how could he say this and all this, like it's not helpful. And ultimately, I think you just have to kind of laugh him off as the stooge he is. However, it's less funny if and when they win, at which the polls seem to be in their favor now. So that's where the black I won't call it a black pill. I'm not black pilled. I'm still hopeful, but that's where the edge of pessimism comes in because you're talking and I agree and I pray to God that this is how it pans out that they're kind of underestimating the demographics of just like normal ass white guys who are
Yeah.
going to be alienated from Kamala's campaign and who are going to maybe see something in Trump and especially Vance. I worry that they kind of know that they have the numbers though, or that they know they have the numbers enough to the what did you call it earlier the
The
margin of
margin
fortification.
of
My
fortification,
big fear is
yes.
that they know they have the numbers and the fact that they can alienate and say whatever they want about white guys, whatever, Republicans, that they know they can do that, that they know they can still win, and that the more they normalize it, the worse it will get. And we're kind of in this frog slowly boiling. situation,
Yeah.
which is kind of the situation, outside of the bounds of this election. That's the general take from a hard right
Well,
perspective. But yeah,
I mean, that gets into it. It's a bit of an offshoot. I won't get into it for very long or very deep, but I do think that if Trump loses, we have 4 years of Kamala, 4 years of essentially acceleration. Um, you do have still a critical mass of people in the country. Frankly, the Amerikaners, if you will, who probably form, if there's any group that could actually kind of unite and change the direction of things, it's that group.
hmm
And yeah, I mean that just it comes that much closer to happening. So in this sense, I root for Trump because I want I want actually, in a weird way, I want stability. I want
yeah, I want
America to
stability. Yeah,
continue as it currently exists and try to fix itself, try to ameliorate the issues. But if Trump doesn't win, I mean that path becomes increasingly difficult to see. And yeah, I think you know we might be headed for something that's more fractious, not necessarily in the Alex Garland sense,
yeah,
but there's a lot of different you know
yeah.
directions that everything could take. And frankly, being in the we are both in blue cities. All cities are blue, really. That in that scenario, those places are not going to be very safe or very 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 good places to be, probably. So
Yeah,
I don't want that. I want the center to hold.
I
I
do
want
too.
the
Yeah.
American system and economy to hold, and to see if we can right the ship, as it were.
Yeah.
And I definitely think, if not, I think Trump is a great guy to ideologically and emotionally bind some critical segment of the public together. If not, in terms of governance ability, but he hopefully this time will have people around him who know what they're doing. And I think the selection of Vance was a great sign, in that direction.
Yeah, no, I agree. We can get into the selection of Vance. We'll get into Vance more properly in general, but the kind of darkest interpretation I've seen of his selection of Vance is that he does believe, that, and I haven't delved into conspiracy theories. The
Yeah.
assassination was weird. I'll just say that.
Oh,
Uh,
well, I mean, I think we
yeah,
know that it was to some extent a at the most optimistic, the most kind of like giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. The Secret Service kind of said let him cook,
yeah,
which is just really messed up.
yeah, no, for sure.
So we know what time it is.
We know what time it is.
That
I,
type of
the
thing.
funny, not funny at all, but one of the darker interpretations of Trump selecting Vance is like he basically selected the furthest right serious contender to mitigate the possibility
Yeah,
of his yeah. And I tend to think there's probably some truth to that, but I also think he does genuinely like Vance. He's used him as loyal, etc. We'll get more into that talking about Vance. But the other thing I want to say, you're talking about these situations in which Trump loses and how things get worse. I mean, I don't really have any solid predictions for that. The last little tidbit here, I'll say, kind of on Vance and on the weird white guy question. and on what happens next is that even though I worry that they kind of know they have us in the vice grip demographically, this is a more Yarvinite point, but Vance as a Yale man, so many people in our sphere having similar credentials, being sort of renegade products of the more elite system in the United States. I think that is a white pill. Like even if
Oh yeah,
that demographic,
absolutely.
even if the our guy's demographic, even if that, intersecting demographic of like high achieving right wing outsiders, even if they're not, even if we're no longer enough to move the needle one way or the other in terms of elections, it is this rising counter elite thing that on a long enough time frame, I think can make a significant difference, and that is, I really, as you said, I want Trump to win, yeah, for stability, but also, just because I like the guy.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah, on a long
absolutely.
enough time frame, that is kind of the thing to lean into is rallying around figures like Vance as avatars of this new counter elite. And just to touch one other thing you said in terms of Trump now being a weirdly stabilizing candidate. It's so funny to say that because, like, yes, if he wins,
Yeah,
there'll be riots in, I don't know, Portland. But most of us don't live in Portland. I do think he has earned that right, like that he would be a stabilizing force. I always go back to this when I talk to people, and it's not really based on anything but a gut feeling. I really do think Trump will be stabilizing for not even so much domestic affairs as I think in the short term he'll actually be pretty, contentious domestically, obviously. But like geopolitically, I do think he will be a force for a move towards peace in the Middle East and with
yeah,
Russia, Ukraine. I don't know, just kind of going off my gut with that. Like other people would say it'd be a disaster, but his record as president when he was president was pretty fucking good in terms of like calming North Korea. Um Even the shit with Iran, which I don't necessarily endorse that he did, like it did end up it
there
didn't it
is.
didn't get come to the things that it was supposed to, and Israel Palestine were relatively okay during that period. I mean, it's all gotten worse under Biden because they know he's weak.
Yeah,
Um, and Kamala is more mentally there, but she's no genius, obviously, and she's conciliatory towards the left, etc. So I don't think anything is getting better under her. So long story short, what I want to say is yes, I agree. Trump was. It's funny to say because in 2016 he was a wild card candidate. In 2024, I do think he's a potentially stabilizing candidate, and I think that's why some far right types like Richard Spencer have turned on him, among other reasons. Is like they're all for whatever this radical change that will supposedly lift kind of demagogues like that up. But
yeah.
yeah, no, I
I mean,
think
I think
there's a weird unity now between the kind of slightly more moderate end of the far right, people that we know basically, with like normie kind of relative, like the normie con has fundamentally changed. Like it's no long. Yes, like there's issues with the Republican Party, but like
yeah,
I do see like the mass of conservatives and normal Americans who are pro Trump as like my people. Like even if I don't necessarily agree with them on everything, like we're
yeah,
more or less aligned. Like I'm not gonna split hairs.
yeah. I mean, I do think that a lot of the quote unquote far right, Spencer right, whatever, to the extent he even has a following, criticisms of Trump. I mean, I think a lot of that is not to be conspiratorial, but op related. These people are, I think it's safe to say that many of the people in that sphere are, well, frankly, have been working with the federal government.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
true.
the idea that like, oh, okay, we have to take what they say at face value, but they're also like the reason why they're not in prison is because they have deals. Well, okay. In that case, maybe you shouldn't take what they say at face value.
Yeah,
And
yeah, some say even Fuentes falls into that. I don't really want to sling mud. He gets enough
yeah,
mud
no, I
slung
mean,
at him,
fair
but yeah,
enough.
yeah. Yeah, no,
But
there is that contingent who are, Jay obsessed or otherwise further right who
I think like
have
a
turned on Trump.
great
But yeah,
person, I mean, as far as I know, and I mean, I think we both know, we know the lay of the land, and we know a lot about these people personally, in some instances. Um, Charles Haywood, just kind of like impeccable credentials, not compromised at all. He's pro-Trump, and he is also like able to like look into the future. And he said, well, and more or less what I just said. If Trump doesn't win, that just means everything is going to happen quicker than it and more messily than it would have.
yeah,
And I
no,
think that's
yeah,
like that's the truth probably, and that's the unvarnished, the massaged or covert message version of the truth. And yeah, I mean he's actually not he's been on the pod, but
right.
yeah, he's one of the people who I tune into the Worthy House, and I listen to his stuff just because like I know that his opinion is something that I value, not just for his intelligence, just for his, he's speaking his mind. He has a lot of money. He's not compromised. He's saying what he thinks, and that's harder to find than you think.
No, absolutely. I saw him. I'm not as into him as you are, I guess. But he said something this morning about Elon Musk being more relevant than the entire corrupt UK regime, and
Yeah,
it
yeah, I
kind of was
saw
a
that.
reminder, like, yeah, Haywood's good, and like I agree with that sentiment. Strong. I won't veer off on. We can do a separate episode on Elon, but
Yeah, of
um,
course.
yeah, when the right time comes, I have thoughts there too. But yeah, Charles, will reps well. This kind of because like he's very based, but also he's not someone who's always like like he's very based, but also very much of like the just a American conservative tradition, I guess, in a way that some of these people who just want to blow everything up are not. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean he has a family, he's a businessman, he's not insane,
yeah,
he's not to my knowledge, like working with like the DEA or something.
yeah. Oh yeah,
So
yeah. No, I truly don't think so. Hillbilly Elegy by JD Vance. I okay, maybe a place to start with this, relating to the foregoing conversation a little bit, like how you had said like you're now all in for JD, all in for Trump. I had always been, I guess, a JD Vance skeptic, sort
mm,
of, not an educated JD Vance skeptic, but just like I don't want to say something that plays into the he's weird hand or whatever, because that's not
yeah.
exactly why. But I did always think like the guy was friends with Rod Dreher. I don't hate Rod Dreher or anything. The Benedict option guy.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't hate him, but I do view him as like a little bit sanctimonious, a little bit like from that side.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I,
also,
yeah,
kind of,
yeah,
some people would say a traitor enemy of, the real right, whatever. But I
yeah.
mean, I think
I wouldn't
there's
even
something to
go.
that.
I wouldn't go that far. Even he certainly has been, a pussy. Let's just say
Yeah.
that. But I think his heart is in the right place a lot of the time. Hopefully now that Vance is running, maybe I don't know, has Dreher endorsed Trump? Whatever, he should, and perhaps will.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna call him out for hypocrisy if he does. He can say one thing on January 6th and hopefully change his mind. Anyway, Rod Dreher aside, um, I always viewed Vance, despite some evidence to the contrary, despite the fact that Teal was endorsing him and it became clear that he, was following a lot of our guys on Twitter, whether it's BAP
Mm.
or Roig Nationalist or, talking about seed oils. Like I basically should have seen that he was better than those guys earlier on, but I did kind of have this sense, and like I'll be real, it probably did have a little bit to do with his kind of demeanor and the way he looks. He looks a little bit like a nice guy conservative. And this was also
Yeah.
compounded by the fact that the film version of Hillbilly Elegy While it certainly has like a good performance from Glenn Close, and I mean there's good acting in the movie, and I appreciate that it was made. I don't want to countersignal it too hard. I wish I loved it, but it's kind of a hallmark. Did you see it, Dan?
Oh, I did. Yeah. I
What did
mean,
you think? Maybe you liked it more than me. I just thought it was kind of too sentimental. I want to vouch for it because of who it's about, whatever. But to me, it
yeah.
was sentimental in a way that I'm not anti that. I just didn't think it was that good of a movie, and I kind of assumed that JD Vance was also kind of this doughy, we should all be nicer to each other kind of guy. And I don't think he is. I think he's the right amount of that mixed with having a harder edge. But what were you gonna say?
Yeah. So I thought the movie was, not a great movie. It's not like, I don't know, Apocalypse Now
Citizen
or,
Kane. Yeah.
yeah, or like what's a great, not violent, but like,
Citizen Kane, perhaps, or
yeah, I'm
yeah.
thinking of specifically Metropolitan by Whit
Hmm.
Stillman. A kind of like, something comedy of manners, or it wasn't a comedy really. It is a drama. But I mean it is, as you say, it's a Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
It's but I mean
Particularly the
for
end. Like I think the way the setup that again the Mamaw character played by Glenn Close, like they get some nice kind of grittiness of like portraying what it's like growing up in Appalachia, but then by the end it's like okay.
yeah.
I don't know because
I
it's
mean
based on a real
for
story and it's based on a real story that is, very sweet and moving in its ways. I just don't think it translated to film that well, and maybe we can ambulate back to this at a later point, but like I think it's interesting to question why it was made into a movie. I'm a little bit I have my some cynical thoughts on this, and it was obviously made into a
okay.
movie too fast, in my opinion. Like the year after a memoir is written by someone
Yeah.
who the country doesn't even know. Like it should have
Yeah.
that movie maybe should have been made in like 30 years.
Well, I mean, clearly it
Yeah,
had like a political valence behind it. It was something that after Trump's election, people were like, well, we have to understand why,
yeah,
these misguided, working class whites would vote for such a man. Let's look at Hillbilly Elegy, etc. So, like, he benefited in some sense from that. But that being said, I do think, yes, Hallmark movie, not great, but like it was pretty good. And the reviews were terrible.
the
It
reviews
was
were
as
worse than the
though
quality.
it
Is true.
was
Yeah.
as though it was like one of the worst, like some type of like utter slop, like yeah, but it wasn't. And I mean, it was just so, and that was a red pilling moment for me actually when I kind of saw like, okay, I watched the movie and I look up like Rotten Tomatoes, and so every critic thinks it's terrible. And like generally, I think the probably there's some bounce because of like populist rallying, among the viewers. But the viewers like was like 67 or like 70 something percent positive. And like, but that's
Yeah. Let me
probably
punch it
pretty
into. Yeah.
close to true.
Yeah.
The critics savaged it because they, whatever, didn't like the message or didn't like who JD Vance had become. Initially, I guess he was supposed to be like an Atlantic magazine darling
Exactly.
type,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
didn't turn out to be that. And the movie probably came out, a little after it became obvious that he wasn't going to be that type of figure. Critics savaged it. It was a good movie. It was entertaining. It
Yeah. I
wasn't. It
should.
wasn't terrible.
I should go ahead and rewatch it. I'm almost regretting saying that. I mean, I'm not gonna lie about my opinions,
I mean, it wasn't a
but
great movie. It wasn't
yeah.
like, oh, what's like, so something I saw recently that was really good. I mean, frankly, I mean, I guess I really haven't seen anything recently that really stirred me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not Fargo. It was not Apocalypse Now or whatever, but it was,
Yeah.
well acted.
I should rewatch it now that I've seen the movie. Yeah, it certainly is not as bad, and yeah, I'm on the Rotten Tomatoes now, seeing this 24% critical splat versus 81% approval
Yeah,
from
there we go.
audiences,
Yeah, like the
and I'm
audience is like it.
instinctually just really wishing I could put myself at the 81%. So maybe I can rewatch it and I maybe I will view it that way. I have a tendency to be, more critical of things that I want to like sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah.
But long story short, yeah, I didn't even want to, it is red pilling to see how critically unfair, how sort of unobjective critics were. And I do think there's kind of a timeline issue where when Hillbilly Elegy first came out and when it first got green lit, whatever studio it was, and maybe it's on Netflix now, I suppose. I
I
don't
think
remember
so.
the
Yeah, I
but
believe it
it's
is.
Ron Howard directed it, which is interesting. I mean, I have a somewhat positive impression of Ron Howard, though I'm sure for people who don't know, I'm trying to think what else.
He
Ron
did
Howard,
Apollo 13.
he's
He
in
did like
Happy
so
Days.
much.
I mean, he's
Yeah.
an act. He is.
Yeah.
This is a total side topic, but he seems like a nice guy to meet. Ron Howard is like one of the true like Hollywood. There's like few people who are more like Hollywood insider than Ron Howard, and I don't mean that in
Yeah.
a bad way.
Fair
I
enough.
think the guy seems very genuine. He was a child actor turned adult actor turned producer turned direct. His whole life has been within this, and I think while I don't know his politics intimately. I think he's probably center left and well-meaning.
One would assume.
But I do think he and some of the others who greenlit it probably thought, yeah, in Vance you had this Atlantic magazine darling, as you very well described it, who maybe he was a little conservative, but he was anti-Trump and could provide answers for this forgotten demographic. And I'm trying to remember the exact timeline. I wish I had a more, I've read Hillbilly Elegy and I've obviously been paying attention to Vance now as anyone else has. I wish I'd been paying attention to him more for longer and had a crystal clear sense of when exactly his sort of turn and conversion to Trumpism occurred. But I think by the time it came out in 2019, 2020, maybe it's even later. Maybe it was like 2021. Either way, he was already starting to turn by the time this came out. And I think that obviously had a lot to do with the way the critics treated it. Sorry, let me get
Yeah.
there. Now it's driving me crazy. Was it? Yeah, 2020. Okay, so it came out in 2020. I was gonna say something else about this, but this has escaped my mind. Hold on a sec. You can jump in if you have anything.
Yeah. What escaped your mind?
Oh, I'm trying to remember. I was gonna say something else about the movie, and I'm not sure what it
Oh.
was. But
Well, yeah, I mean like I mean the movie is, obviously you know, there's a lot to say about it. There's a lot to say about the critics' reception to it. And it was pretty good as far as like Hallmark movie types go.
yes.
What
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, well, what I think is probably more to the point for us here is the book itself. And I think we both listened to the audiobook, and
Right.
he actually read it.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, one thing about Vance that, is interesting is he's a good writer. And
He
this
is.
is
Yeah.
like, this isn't your average political, not novel political memoir that is designed to just kind of like be a money laundering operation for think tanks to buy a bunch of copies and
Yeah.
give money to the publisher, give money to the author. This is actually well written,
A memoir. Yeah,
also well spoken. He's a good reader.
he is.
It we're if Trump wins, we're actually gonna have to some extent a writer in the White House,
Yeah, no,
and that's
that
that's kind of
detail
cool.
it does not escape me how relevant that is. I mean, Vance is basically a guy who got big by writing a book. And how many other men like that are there now? S- Even within literature, it's literally hard. It's difficult to think of a man who got big by writing a book, even within the field of literature, which is insane.
Yeah.
Much less any other field. I mean, yeah, I can't think. Yeah, this detail is not lost on me as the co-host of a right-wing literary podcast. No, it's very very cool and very relevant. And as you said, it is well written. I'll get into some more of my thoughts on it in a second, in terms of literary quality, but I definitely think it's well written, well read. There's certain things I thought he could have pushed even further on. But yeah, to your point, it's almost not a political book at all. I think if he wrote it now, or if he wrote another book now, it would be more political, and I'm all there for that because he's a smart guy politically.
Yeah.
But this book I really don't think was supposed to be political at all. Again, we'll get a little more into the content, but like he talks about a lot of political issues and pre-political issues and meta-political issues without he's not giving his opinion on this, that, and the other thing or laying out policy proposal here. He's mostly just telling the story of his life and how he finds it intersects somewhat with, statistically backed trends within Appalachia. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's not that long of a book. It's somewhat simple in a good way. You know what I mean? It's not a deep intellectual dive into anything. It's the story of a guy's life that just so happens to also intersect with a huge demographic of the country. And it's memoir meets it's I guess you could kind of say, I don't want to put so because it sounds inherently negative, but I guess it has to be put this way. It's kind of like armchair sociology. I'm not like a big
Sure.
believer in sociology as this hard science anyway, so I think we're all any sociologist at some level an armchair sociologist, right? There's definitely statistics in the book about poverty and trends and drug use and parenting and all and church attendance and many the book is it's hard-headed enough to have stats, but he is just kind of going from the hip. I don't really have a problem with that. I think that that's all any of us are ultimately doing. We can continue to split hairs on that. I don't know. But
Yeah.
to rewind just a tiny bit, the other thing I was going to say about the movie is I didn't disparage the quality so much because I don't want to disparage the quality. My only thing is it kind of affected my view of Vance as a somewhat, I don't know, just a fundamentally soft and earnest image.
Sappy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which even in saying that, I shouldn't push back on because I love this kind of emo Vance meme, and like that is also part
Yeah.
of his appeal. But origin story kind of this pod for me is and I'm surprised it hasn't come up yet, the infamous JD Vance fucked a couch meme. I don't
Yeah.
know who came up with that. Probably I guess it was probably on the left side of things. I'm a weird enough guy that I don't think it's a negative meme at all. Like I think it's funny, and in fact, I thought it was real. And that is literally, maybe I should be ashamed to say this, but I'm not. I literally read or listened to Hillbilly Elegy because I thought the couch fucking thing was real. Because I thought, oh wow, the movie is this sentimental gloss over like a fundamentally personal story of
Yeah.
tribulation and psychosexual development, like a Delicious Tacos book or a Dan Baltic book. And I was like, I want me some of that. And of course, the couch thing is not true. I get, I'm not a big enough profile. Like, this is the type of thing that people would skewer me on. Like, dude actually wishes it's like a left wing Babylon D article. Like,
Wishes he fucked the
right when
couch.
weirdo, yeah, I'm disappointed that Vance didn't actually fuck the couch. But like, listen, I've never done that. But I have known people who've tried
Interesting.
weird methods of jacking off,
Yeah.
and I
No,
don't
I
think it's
mean,
that weird.
yeah. It
And I mean, it is weird, but I don't think it's that. I don't know. It's not outside. It's not beyond the pale. But it's not bestiality. You know what I mean? It's just a weird thing that, in theory, someone could put in some memoir about, and like
I
I
mean,
would
it's
find
like
it funny.
close
Yeah,
enough to being like something that was believable. Like to me, it wasn't because I knew that like, okay, whether or not he had a future in politics, he went to Yale Law School and this is under his real name. He is not going to write about fucking a couch.
yeah.
It's not, it's going to, be something that will haunt him, his legal career. It would not, he wouldn't do that. But I mean, like, I kind of, I guess, maybe had a little bit of inside baseball. I know how lawyers are, etc. Yeah, I knew that that was not in, but I mean, like, other people just, they're like, yeah, I guess, you wrote about that. The interesting thing for me was actually it was way more candid than your typical, memoir from a politician. I mean, especially I saw online, I thought it was a joke they're like making fun of his mama, his hillbilly grandmother.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a passage that was, cited, and they were just, because there were other, examples of they create like fake, passages from Hillbilly Elegy to make him look bad. And it's where he comes to his mama and he's afraid that he's gay. And his mama says to him, JD, do you like sucking cocks?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, no, mama. And she's like, then you ain't gay, JD.
Yeah.
And I thought that had to be a joke. That had to be, but no, it's like it actually is in the the book, the
because
memoir.
these are
And
normal
it's funny.
experiences.
It's like
Yeah.
it's and it's very human. It's I thought this was a much more well written, yes, but also